say. Just a very small amount of background because Eduardo has already introduced us. We're been established now for, well, 10 years. Our name is Isan Seeds, which Isan is derived from this large flat plateau in the northeast of Thailand. We have around 10,000 small farmers who produce seed for us in this area. We focused on, when I say 10,000 farmers, it sounds a lot, but it's not 10,000 farmers with more than a hectare or 2 hectares usually. That's the average landholding here is about 3 or 4 hectares through this whole area. We are the pink bit here in the map of Thailand, and you can see just below us is Cambodia. To our right is Laos, and then Vietnam and the coast. And so that's our area. It's a very different area to central or northern or southern Thailand. The people here are from mixed historical groups. The main language of the area is Lao or Isan, same thing. It's almost the same as the Lao language. In our area, we're at the very south of Isan. In our area, our village is Khmer speaking. So it's the ancient Cambodian culture spread through this area. They also speak my workers speak a very ancient language called Sue, and we have Thai as the language that holds the country together. So forgive my inability to speak more than a few words in Spanish or Portuguese or French, but I'm coping with learning 4 languages here every day of the week. Just a little bit about our climate here. We're 15 degrees north of the equator. Our seed shed is at 150 meters elevation, which would be a very typical elevation. We don't have much in the way of hillscape here. Our rainfall pattern is distinct and dependable, and we have a very pronounced dry season that starts November, December, January, February, and March, and they're always, almost always dry or nearly dry. I've had it rain once in December in the last 10 years and never in January. So if you're timing your ripening for those short days and dry periods, you can get very, very good quality seed because of that. And you can see the very steep fall off. September is the peak. So we're August now, we're just coming into September. So we're in our 2 peak rainfall months, 300 mils each month. And then it just falls off a cliff. But it does leave the land waterlogged at field capacity, usually at the end of October, which gives us the ability to grow a quick growing crop on residual soil moisture as long as that crop is quite good. Our farms, our own farms, are managed regeneratively. We have a set of principles from regenerative ag. I'm sure many of you know these already. We minimize the amount of soil disturbance. We minimize biocides and soluble fertilizer inputs. We don't preclude them, but we try to think hard about them. We try and cover the soil surface at all times. We try and maintain living root in the ground. Not easy here, especially towards the end of that dry season as the weather heats up. And we try and maximize diversity. The last principle I haven't even put up, which is integrate livestock. We just don't have that on our farms at all because we're focused on seed production. So that's just giving you a little bit of setting and background for how we do things here. So what is a cover crop? And my definition would be that it's a close growing crop used for soil protection and improvement. and it's usually, but not always, grown between cash crops. And what is the purpose of a cover crop? Well, there are multiple purposes. It can produce, and this is one of the things that people have to figure out is what they're really trying to achieve with their cover crop, because it will affect so many things: the species they use, the timing of the sowing, the timing of the termination, and so on. So I just want to run through this list with some illustrative sort of slides and a little bit of work that we've done or I've found that other research have done as the sort of main basis of my small talk this morning. So the first one is to reduce soil erosion. And cover crops can do this in a number of ways. They could protect the soil surface from wind, and the leaves will protect from the direct hit of the rainfall. So presuming the rain's pelting down, it hits the cover crop and then drips to the ground. So you don't have the force of the raindrop actually impacting on the earth, which helps a little bit. It will also, the cover crop will reduce any velocity of water movement over the soil surface. And the root mass of the cover crop is anchoring the soil in place, and as well as doing other things that we'll come on to later, like improving the porosity and soil structure and so on. So that's the main crux of what a cover crop's doing in terms of soil erosion. Last year, we did a small piece of research here. Because the government is very aware that erosion rates from cassava fields, Thailand is one of the world's top 5 producers, I think. It's certainly in the top 10. I think it's about number 4 of cassava in the world. But the erosion rates can be up to 70 tons of topsoil per hectare per year. And this, I believe, equals about 4 or 5 centimeters of topsoil being lost per hectare per year. If you have 20 years of cassava cropping, which we do, there's fields surrounding one of our small production farms here, which I've never seen it in anything but cassava, and I've been going there for 11 years, so it's probably going to be 18, 19, 20 years that field has been solely in cassava. So the cassava crop is lifted, and a month or 2 later, it's back in cassava again. Okay, so it's a very, very serious problem. We're a large producer of cassava. There's huge amounts of erosion in the fields. And so we were asked to have a look and see if we could find some kind of solution with cover crops. This is a typical cassava field. Sorry, if I go back, there's a few problems with cassava. You want to plant it just as the rains start, but at the start of the rainy season, you get these tremendous thunderstorms brewing up, and if it hits you, you get very intense rain over a very short period of time. But the cassava is it's a cutting, it's put in the ground, and it's just starting to produce leaves. So you have huge amounts of bare soil. You've also ridged the cassava up, or in our area, you've ridged it up. Our soils are good, but they're not good enough to do cassava on the flat. And so what you've done in your field is you've created a hill structure. And the rain hits the top and the sides, and it washes to the bottom, and then you've given it the river channel to run down. So the erosion can be severe. And here you can see this is actually deposition at the lower end of a field from soil that's eroded further up the field. So we took a look at this and decided that maybe we could find a legume, an intercrop cover, which was had the attributes that allow you to hold the soil. So it's got to be able to germinate in a very hot period of the year when there's not much moisture. And we finally came upon a very, I suppose, old-fashioned plant called Elysocarpus vaginalis, Alice clover. And this plant had all the attributes that we were looking for to allow us to stabilize completely inter-row between the cassava. So I'll just show you some pictures. This is it germinating at about 10 days. The plant in the foreground is about 10 days old. And you can see that it's germinated in these metallic particles. These are where the rain has washed the soil. Our soil's of volcanic origin on this farm, and the rain has washed the soil, and they have the ability to come through this. Not many seeds can come through this because the metallic structure, the temperature is enormous, and most seeds can't actually force their way through the heat that's stored in these metallic particles, but at least can. So it was really good from that point of view for us. But then as the plant grows, it grows pretty quickly, and it tends to spread out and along the ground a little bit before it grows up. So it's got a very interesting growth habit. And when it spreads out, it roots at the nodes. So all of these things pointed to this being a really suitable plant for growing inter-row and stabilizing and reducing the erosion enormously. And here it's already rooted either side of the main stem. And if you leave it to grow, you can see it forms a very, very dense mat, and there is absolutely no erosion. From these rows, even when we established them from seedlings, once the seedlings were established, there was no erosion in those rows compared to the control rows. So that was sort of the piece of research that we did here. We tried a number of other covers, including Crotalária. They had a place to play, but Elysocarpus is the one that I recommended farmers go ahead with. It's also a dual purpose, which is important because it makes excellent hay, and it's good for cut and carry. So high protein, being a legume, it leaves a good amount of nitrogen in the ground, and it's very easy to manage. And because many of our farmers are very poor, the seed is quite expensive. It's not really difficult to produce, but it's not cheap. But within the cassava system, they can just leave it to run to seed, maybe do a cut this time of year, and then it will run to seed. And they can allow it to seed and then just tidy it up before they lift the cassava. And they've got a seed pool in the ground. So if they go back into cassava next year, then they won't need to sow again. There's plenty of seed in the soil. So it's kind of like once established as in a continuous cassava system, the crop is the seed will just lie embedded in the soil. The problem comes when they want to go into another crop if they move out of cassava. So they will have an awful lot of wildling seedlings coming up and maybe have to have a spray program for a few months or even a year. Okay, so the next aspect of cover crops is improvement to soil fertility. And these are normally, but not always, performed by cover crops, which are legumes. And then the term green manure comes in. So we often see GMCC or green manure cover crops. but specifically the cover crop, which is trying to perform this action of improving soil fertility, is usually a legume, and if they're properly selected, they can greatly reduce or even negate any need for nitrogenous fertilizers in the following cash crop. But that depends on what cover crop is used and how long it's in the ground for and how it is terminated. And nitrogen is the element that's garnered most attention from farmers and researchers, but green manures can manage a range of macro and micronutrients, including phosphorus in the soil. And there's a wee bit of research being done now, or the last 20 years, which is showing this. And then another, I don't know about Portuguese or Spanish, but we also have the term catch crop, which is a cover that's specifically grown to retain and recycle nitrogen and other elements, preventing it from leaching or volatilization. So maybe you've got a short summer break period before an autumn sown crop goes in, and you've applied, you've had maybe a maize crop before the summer, and so you put a cover crop in just to retain a catch cover crop in just to retain those, the nitrogen and the other elements before the autumn sown crop goes in. So you would terminate it if you plowed it in maybe a week or two before you sowed your autumn crop. Just to put a little bit of figure work on this, work done in West Australia with sun hemp and a number of other cover crops found that in a very short cover crop period, less than 6 weeks, 50 kilos of N was fixed per hectare. Reducing, so in terms of an economic benefit, there are some. Here we have the same when I talk a little bit later about how we use our Crotalária in production to improve the following rice crop. We're finding similar kind of things. But one of the big things about the nitrogenous cover crops is they help reduce your fertilizer loading in watersheds, and that therefore improves environment downstream and also the groundwater quality. So here where I live, there's a problem with nitrates in the water. We all use well water, most of the wells 30 to 50 meters deep. Bore wells, and we have a problem with our water, which is leading to poor people having to go and buy bottles of water because the nitrogen use in the orchards and market gardens around here has led to excessive nitrates in the groundwater. And on a large scale, we can see this is what's happened in the Gulf of Mexico with the dead zone at the mouth of the Mississippi, and also the Great Barrier Reef, where degradation is being blamed partly on excessive nitrogen fertilizer wash into the oceans nearby. But again, cover crops have a place in these things. Some work in that, two papers from Africa showed that strip cover crops, so Desmodium strip cover crop between maize, improved many aspects, but key to that was phosphorus availability. So in some way, the cover was solubilizing unavailable phosphate in the soil and making it available to the plant. And some other work done in West Africa showed that Mucuna pruriens significantly increased phosphate availability after some fertilization with rock phosphate. So we all know that when you put rock phosphate on, you get about, I think, tell you on the bag about 3%. I think it's usually about 27. It depends on the phosphate source, but it's about 20, the high 20s of pure phosphate, but only about 3% is plant available. What some of these plants that are used in cover crops have an ability to make more of the phosphate available, and that's was very, very interesting because we've only got from N to P, and there isn't much research from there on through all the macro and micronutrients as to what these covers are doing. So this is we've kind of gotten really interested in Mucuna now, so we've just started producing seed again this year. We produced some a few years ago, but we think that Mucuna's got a great future, not just for how it acts on the elements of the soil, but because actually if you've got a weed-infested property, it's one of the finest covers for reducing those weeds because of its fast growth. These plants are 3 weeks old, I think, and they're hitting the top here and starting to run along the bamboo now. Cover crops can increase soil organic matter through incorporation of stems and the degradation of the root mass. This is a very, very important aspect and helps improve many physical aspects of the soil. It will increase soil organic matter, allows the soil to hold a lot more water. It's not a linear relationship. A cubic meter of soil with 1% organic matter can maybe, I don't know, I'm just saying, it can maybe hold 10 liters, 100 liters of water. But a cubic meter of soil with 3 times the organic matter, so say 3% instead of 1%, can hold 500 or 600 liters of water. So the water holding capacity is not linear. It goes up in a curve. And this is a very, very important point. And as soil organic matter levels decrease worldwide, cover crops are one of our best ways and cheapest ways of improving those soil organic matter levels, and therefore the water holding capacity and buffering capacities of soil to get you through droughts and so on. And obviously they also can sequester carbon. We'll come on to that a little bit later. Depending on the cover crop, they can also help address compaction of soils, so with tractor runs and so on. But deep-rooted covers and things like fodder radish can bust through those plow pans and compaction layers. And they can also enhance soil micro and macro fauna. And this is a very, very important aspect. And there's a very, very good piece of research done by the University of Illinois. Do cover crops benefit the soil microbiome? And this is just the synopsis. Our analysis shows that across 60 worldwide field studies, there is a consistent 27% increase in microbial abundance in fields with cover versus no cover. So categorically, yes, in this desk study. And they're now doing some very interesting work at the University of Illinois, and worth following. Any agronomists want to follow up on that. That's a very nice piece of research. Now, again, coming back to our experience here, in a province called Yasathon, which is one province north from here in Sisaket, we worked with a group of farmers, and they had declining rice yields. They were below the Thai average by about maybe 60% of the Thai average rain-fed rice yield. So In 2023, we weighed the average yields from these 19 small farms, and their rice yield was, I hope, 1,762 kilos per hectare. We don't use hectares here in Thailand. Everything's different. We use a 1,600 square meter measure called a rai. But anyway, that was the average rice yield. We then left some controls. We did sun hemp only treatment, and we did sun hemp and a base 15-15-15 dressing. And so that happens with sowing in November, and so the sowing of the sun hemp is in November. The sun hemp was incorporated in January, and then the rice was sown in May. And the following rice harvest, which was 2024, October, November, the control was up very slightly over what we'd got as an average for the farms the year before. With sun hemp only, we got a substantial increase. And with the base fertilizer and sun hemp, an even bigger increase. So we can see a very direct impact from one single species cover crop. And it's increased yield. I don't know. Sorry, I'd have to go back to the research, but that must be 40%, about 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 50% increase in yield just with the cover crop, and with the cover crop and some fertilizer application, even more. So the power of these cover crops used in situations where the land and the farmers are struggling is very powerful. This is just a bit of an interlude, as well as Crotalária Carnavalia ensiformis jack bean is another fairly commonly grown cover here for the dry season after rice harvest. And it has some benefits, but it's not palatable to stock in the way that Crotalária is before flowering or before seed pod set. But a good cover, and it's a little lower, but it shades the soil. It produces a decent amount of nitrogen and a reasonable amount of biomass going back into the soil. Okay, so one of the key reasons that cover crops are used is that they can reduce weed sowings. First of all, the sowing has to be quite thick, so you probably sow at a higher rate if you're really just interested in controlling weeds. And as long as you've chosen your cover crop well and it's fast growing, it should, depending on your weed spectrum, control most of your weeds. And those that do germinate, and many do germinate, will not go to fruition in their life cycle in seed within the cover. The cover is the cover crop smothering effect. So you've got a physical smothering effect, reducing the light, reducing moisture to the weeds, and so on from the cover crop. But some cover crops also offer a chemical effect, an allelopathic effect, which helps suppress weeds. So again, if you choose your cover crop carefully and you choose one with an allelopathic effect, which also grows very, very tall, then you can really very quickly suppress weeds in your field. And further to that, depending on how you terminate your cover, you can increase that suppression. So we like to roll crimp the cover down so it lies on the soil surface. The first reason we like to do that is the cover holds moisture and it stops the sun hitting the soil surface. You've terminated it. You're not going to lock up some of your soil microbes in digesting the cover because you've just laid it on top, so they digest it at their leisure, and you've got a big thick mulch. And then you can plant into that, especially if you're planting something like, say, sugarcane, and it's robust enough, or even, I guess, panicums and so on. You could plant those into the rolled crimped cover, and they would come away very, very well. So we're just going to take you through a fast-growing cover that we used last year for weed suppression. So we had a block that was very, very weed-prone. The block had not been farmed well, and we took it over. And so the first thing, found the tallest growing selection of Crotalária that we could. This is at about 8 days, 9 days. And this is at about 1 month. So you can see already underneath here, there's a little bit of weed developing, but it's going to be suppressed really quickly because the weed is just, it's a meter and a meter away from high light levels already. And we grew this through for seed, but the point of this illustration is as I said, this is very tall growing. You can see that we're coming into our dry period. The seed is ripening off, and you can see the leaves have dropped on the ground. There's a mulch of Crotalária leaves, but you can also see that there's almost no weed there at all. So it was a very, very effective way to do one thing, which was to suppress weeds on this block of land. And we've now gone back into this land with a cassava crop, and it was reasonably successful. In fact, just outside where the Crotalária was, we did a couple of extra rows of cassava, and they've got much more weed content than where the actual Crotalária was. And we got a video clip. So this is a video clip from Australia, and I believe they were using our Crotalária seed, and they are doing this process of rolling and crimping. So that, in case you don't know, the roller has blades on it, but they're not sharp blades. But when the roller presses it down, the blades bruise across the stem in such a way as the plant can't regrow. So this is pretty common technology now, and just runs through. So you can see the So, it's a pretty quick operation. They've got to drill, they've then got to terminate with the roller crimper, and then they can come in afterwards planting their sugarcane. And as I said before, they plant with the roll. So the row runs down in the same direction as the plants are rolled down. It's pretty easy to get it in, and you've got this very nice mulch which is slowly going to degrade. Meanwhile, it's holding the water in the soil, evapotranspiration is reduced, and shading the soil and stopping weed growth in the early growth of the sugarcane. And the next role of cover crops is in reducing, suppressing, breaking pest and disease cycles. And there's quite a lot of examples of this, and it's pretty well known, that this, like brassicas, are good for reducing root knot nematode and other nematodes in the soil. So is Crotalária and several other covers. The mechanisms are still being debated, and this is one of our problems, is that people can see the effect. They've known the effect for many years, but the actual how that effect comes about is not clearly, or is poorly understood as yet. And again, there's a lot of research now starting in this area, which is great. And just looked at a few papers in the last few days. And again, I came across the use of Mucuna, and the scientists said that when they used Mucuna in the cropping system, it altered the microbial communities in the rhizosphere and the soil. And it was consistent with the hypothesis that the resulting control of nematodes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really very, very new area, and one that we're learning a lot more about. And I think in the end, we're going to end up with a suite of different cover crops for helping with particular problems within the soil. That's some Mucuna seeds that we've produced here. And on the other side of it, there are certain elements of the soil which benefit from cover crops. So one of those elements is arbuscular mycorrhizae fungi. And one of the plants that's been researched in Brazil, I believe, as well, is Crotalária ochroluca. And this is some seed pods from our production fields last year. In general, Crotalária species have been shown to increase both the amount and the variety of arbuscular mycorrhizae fungi in the soil. And arbuscular mycorrhizae link in with the crop roots, the crop that's sown after, and they increase plant uptake of phosphorus, micronutrients, nitrogen, and they also can enhance water absorption. So that's very important here, and partly explains what the little experiment I'm going to show you that we did last year here. They also influence the formation and stability of soil aggregates. So they do a lot of really good things in the soil. So there's something that's to be encouraged. And last year we grew cassava in 2 plots, and one which had a Crotalária addition and one which didn't. And the average yield of the plot that had the Crotalária addition was 6.5 kilos of root mass per plant. And the average in the non-treated, the control, 0.68, and that's just a typical example of a plant from each plot. Yeah, so you can see that again very, very quickly. This was just a short crop of this ochroluca put in before planting the cassava cuttings, and it had a tremendous effect in this case on the cassava. And part of it might be the P mobilization. I think one of the keys is it also enhances water absorption. And as we come into this dry spell, as we came into the dry spell, I didn't really notice that much difference. There was a bit of difference in the plots when I had a bit of a look around, but we don't harvest the cassava until February or March. So we've already had 4 months without rain. And when we came to harvest, we had a huge difference. So my hypothesis is that it was due to arbuscular mycorrhiza being able to increase the amount of water being brought to the plant. But like I say, it's untested. Cover crops can improve biodiversity and wildlife habitat. This is important for some people. They specifically want that. They'll plant a cover crop around the edge of their fields to enhance pollinators and wildlife in general. and so on and so forth. So it's good from that aspect. It's just a random shot of a cover crop. Obviously, if you mix species, you'll get more diversity because different pollinators like nectar at different depths from the flower surface. So, for instance, umbelliferous plants, like plants in the carrot and parsnip family, have very short nectaries, and their flowers are very upright. They sit up in umbels like this. So it's very good for insects that have very short proboscis, and they can feed on those. Or and so what I'm saying is, if you're wanting to enhance diversity, put in a whole mixed range of covers. And there is some research showing that mixed covers do better in drought situations. So if you have one plot of cover X jackbean, one cover of sun hemp, and you have a drought period and you have one plot mixed, you'll get sown at half rates, you'll get more biomass off the mixed one than you will off either of the single plots on their own. So this is something that's worth further research, and we might try and do something here ourselves, but yeah, there's plenty of people can research this. Just as a bit of a case study, our main pollinator for Crotalária is a carpenter bee, Xylocopa species. It's a very important pollinator in this area. It's up there with honeybees, and it's especially important for legume crops. Xylocopa is a solitary bee. It nests inside bamboo or tree branches. However, we have a very cyclical number of carpenter bees. So during the dry season, there's not many wildflowers or crops around, and their numbers tend to plummet off. And this is an annual cycle. But what we've noticed is that when we grow Crotalária during the dry season, it's a nectar source for them, and the Xylocopa numbers stay much higher than they had previously done or normally do. And so we've got these two wonderful large solitary bees. This is one species. This is the bigger of the two species. This is the smaller of the two species. But it's just a very small example of how a cover crop can actually help with biodiversity in a very specific way that we've noticed here. Okay, cover crops as nurse crops. This is fairly new, but there's a few examples of covers being used to protect more fragile species. I think Eduardo will help me. There's a little bit of work being done on Crotalária with panicums. Sometimes they're used in orchard and plantation situations, and we'll have an example of that. Yeah, so here's just a local example. Someone who'd planted in the tree in the middle is guava, a young guava plant, and they just planted circles of Crotalária juncia around it. And yeah, I'm not sure if it really worked, but yeah, this is our own example from our farm where we've got a little bit of panicum in this year. And we've grown the panicum in amongst a legume cover with a permanent legume cover. Well, it's going to run the whole 2 or 3 years that we run the panicum crop. And so that's a mix of 4 legumes. We've got Centrosema pasquarum, cavalcade, the Australian selection. We've got Elise, Elisocarpus virginalis. We've got a cowpea, and we've got some Ashnomini as well in there. And well, we see what the yields are. But for my eye, we've grown panicums for Dr. Michael here in the past, and he wanted bare ground and all the rest of it. And so I'm sort of a little bit determined to prove that we can get good seed yields. And when we feel that maybe the competition's too much, we just come in with a brush cutter and we just cut the cover down. You could cut and carry. They're all perfectly good animal food if you so wanted. Or you just leave it lying to go back into the soil to keep building the soil. And this is a new area for me. I haven't really had any training, or I left university long before cover crop carbon sequestration was in vogue. So it's been kind of interesting, and there seems to be some quite interesting research, things that we already knew, but they're talking about soil organic carbon levels increasing. So one or two of the papers even went as far as to say that this was probably one of the quickest ways and cheapest ways of reducing CO2 levels was to lock the carbon back up into the soil. And there's some pretty well documented research now coming out of the United States showing farmers actually increasing topsoil levels. And most soil texts from 30, 40 years ago tell you that topsoil takes thousands of years to form. But with cover crops and other techniques and the use of livestock in the system, this appears to be able to happen a lot more quickly than was previously thought, which is good news for the planet and good news for cover crop seed producers. Okay, so that covers everything that I wanted to talk about.